In relation to specific allegations made in the media, the inquiry found that the Commandant did not order or advise the female officer cadet to apologise to cadets in her division for having gone to the media. The female officer cadet was offered counselling in her meeting with the Commandant. No sergeant had spoken defensively to the female officer cadet on leaving the Commandant's office. The female officer cadet was not abused by cadets in morning assembly on 6 April. No speech of apology was cancelled because of the volatile mood of cadets and fears it would fuel anger directed at the female officer cadet by fellow cadets, and the female officer cadet room was not plastered with shaving foam. Those of you who followed this issue at the time will recall that when those allegations were put to me in public, generally at press conferences, I either said I had advice which was to the contrary or strong advice to the contrary, and that those matters would be investigated. They have by the Kirkham inquiry, and those foundings have been made. So far as Commandant Kafer is concerned, as you'd recall, in April of last year, from memory the 9th of April, he was placed on leave from ADFA by the then Vice Chief of the Defence Force and served in a different defence institution in Canberra. I made the point publicly that I thought that the Commandant had made an error of judgment in allowing unrelated disciplinary matters to be dealt with at the same time as the so-called Skype issue became public. From a very important point of principle in my view, namely that one should never inadvertently or advertently allow the character of the potential victim of an alleged sexual assault to be brought into play. And that's why I strongly said at the time, and I resolve from it in not one iota, that that was an error of judgment. At the time, the then Chief of the Defence Force made the same comment, that he thought it was an error of judgment, and I subsequently received advice from the then Vice Chief of the Defence Force, the now Chief of the Defence Force, that he also believed it was an error of judgment. In the event, the Kirkham inquiry has found that the way in which Commandant Kafer and ADFA staff dealt with that matter was a reasonable approach. The finding of Kirkham also says that a different decision maker might have made a different decision, and also says that it was unfortunate, finds that it was unfortunate that Commandant Kafer did not discuss with the officer cadet, with Kate, or her defending officer, the question of proceeding with the disciplinary matter. In the event, after very serious consideration by the Chief of the Defence Force and I and the Secretary, the Chief of the Defence Force has come to the conclusion that there is no legal basis in the Kirkham inquiry for not returning Commandant Kafer to ADFA, and that will occur this week. There are no legal grounds for continuing to leave him in a position unassociated with ADFA. Indeed, the Chief of the Defence Force has legal advice that if he is not returned to ADFA, the Chief runs the risk of being subject to legal proceedings to reinstate him.